Yo, what is up? What is up, YouTube boxing family? It's K right here. I'm back with another great video for you guys today. I'm out here on the grind, so figured I just make a little video on Mr. Canelo Alvarez. I figured I'd talk about this little subject and probably just dig deep on Canelo's reign to fame. But I think Canelo deserves some massive criticism for this, and I'm not too sure if it's worth talking about this, but I think this is a good topic for you guys to take apart and take it for yourself. But let's go into it. The topic of this video will be: did Canelo Alvarez avoid 147 to chase for legacy fights, or to basically make his path to becoming a champion? Which, we already know what happened. He fought Matthew Hatton, a guy who was unranked. I believe he was Ricky Hatton's brother, and he knocked him out, to get the title. That was back in 2011. But that type of fight wasn't really supposed to be the fight for Canelo. He was actually supposed to fight Jermell Charlo. For those of you that don't know, he was supposed to fight Canelo for the title championship vacancy. But when you look at Canelo's career, he had over like 40 something plus fights leading up to Matthew Hatton, and leading up to like Floyd Mayweather. That's when he went 42-1. And I mean, there's a reason why Canelo's record is like close to perfect, because he heavily avoided a lot of tough competition, and he took the easiest route possible to get away from all the difficult fights. But I think when you measure the level of opposition, his toughest fights that he ended up losing was Floyd Mayweather, Dimitri Bivol, and then obviously Caleb Plant. I think Plant really showed a lot of bad style matchup, deficiencies that Canelo cannot do against pure boxers or boxer punchers. But I think complete fighters really destroy Canelo's fighting style, and I think that's why Canelo has always been on this come forward type of boxing style that a lot of fighters do. Even with Miguel Cotto, if he was younger and he was able to perform a lot better at 154 or middleweight, but when Canelo had fought Cotto back in this time frame, Cotto was obviously at the end of his career, but Cotto, if he was a lot younger, around Canelo's age, I think Cotto would have given Canelo a very difficult fight. And I don't think, Canelo would have been able to do what he wanted to do to be successful. But looking at Canelo's career as a fighter, the biggest issue of the manner was that Canelo was not supposed to really be fighting at bigger weights to begin with. And when you look at his career as a fighter, he started at 140. See, now, most people would say, oh, well, he was young. He was 15 years old when he started fighting, or when he came into the pros. But, down in Mexico, you could basically fight whoever you want. But when you look at the weight class, evolution, Canelo was basically fighting a bunch of no-name guys. But when you look at like the weight discrepancy, like this is probably like the most accurate level of like recording his weight, but he was naturally a 147 pounder. Like, look at the evolution in his weight gain. Yeah, granted, he was fighting at a catch weight at 151, and then he fought right back down to 147, and then right over here, same thing, 148, 147.5. So Canelo was basically a 147 pounder, because if you look at it right here, he moved up to 154 when he had the opportunity, to go ahead and face Matthew Hatton, because this is like the only chance where he was able to actually, get the opportunity to fight him. Because look at the other fights that he had. He fought at 149.5, fighting for the WBC Super Welterweight title. So the only reason why he only came up to 154 was because of Matthew Hatton for the title vacancy. Because if you look at it right here, with the Jose Miguel Cotto's brother, in which Cotto was giving Canelo a very difficult fight, and he came close to knocking Canelo out, in that fight. But look at the weight discrepancy. He was a North American, he was the NABF Federation welterweight champion. And then he decides to go up in weight or work his way up to super welterweight to just get the title. So now the question asked is like, why did Canelo not go after all the top dogs at 147? Because if you look at it, the problem is that when you look at the evolution of the opponents at welterweight, Canelo could have fought every single one of them. He could have fought Errol Spence. He could have fought Keith Thurman. He could have fought Sean Porter. He could have fought David Avanesian. He could have fought, Jamal James back in the day, Abel Ramos, Blair Cobbs, Giovanni Santillan, in which I don't think he's that good, but, he's decent. He's a good fighter, but, he needs to keep building. Alexander Vesputin, that would have been a good fight. I mean, Maurice Hooker. Maurice Hooker, he's not a natural welterweight. There's plenty of great names on here. Paul Kroll, Thomas Delorme, that would have been a flame fight. Canelo versus, did I say Ugas? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I said Ugas, but Canelo basically avoided 147. And when you think about it, the level of opposition at 147 is very deep. Obviously, we don't know a lot of these names here. Shout out to Mark Reyes. He's coming back soon. Don't worry, Mark Reyes, Nation is coming back very, very, very soon. But support Mark Reyes. But yeah, Canelo basically did not take the opportunity at 147 because even if we want to play politics, people want to say, oh, Golden Boy at that time was not going to set up any fights for Canelo, with the PBC, in which, that's bullshit, because Mikey Garcia, he was doing business with the PBC when he was with Golden Boy and Top Rank. So I just don't see what Canelo's excuse would be. I mean, he fought Floyd Mayweather when he was fighting on his undercards, but he was with Golden Boy, and Golden Boy made that fight pretty easily with Floyd Mayweather, to the point where Floyd Mayweather, he beat up Canelo, and then Canelo went back, in his own way to have his fights on HBO, and he was able to just do the things that he wanted to do. But now that we see that Canelo, he's been strategically moving very funny, it just clearly shows that the level of opposition that Canelo was basically cornered, into, that was going to be the detriment of his, career, because I do believe Canelo would have been very successful at some point in time in the welterweight division. But the thing is all these top welterweights that you see now, it clearly shows that Canelo was moving very quickly out of the welterweight division. And I think that's really the biggest problem that a lot of people don't want to talk about, because they think that Canelo he's not obligated to fight tough opposition unless he wants to, because he'll only do it if fans, pressure him enough where he has to have some credible names here and there, but then he'll go right back to cherry picking, fighting low level opposition names that no one asks him to fight. But it's when you look at his resume, most of his opposition is C level to B- level, opposition. So I just think, honestly, at the end of the day, Canelo, when we look at the 147 talent pool, the talent level opposition at 147 probably 9 times out of 10 would have destroyed Canelo. And I mean, even though welterweight is a very, how should I say, it's a very deadly division, but there's so many guys that come in so big in their fights that they're basically fighting like middleweights or like, you know, almost like super welterweights at the end of the day. So I think there's a reason why Canelo wanted to be out of the welterweight division and just go ahead and get a belt at super welterweight, because looking at, you know, his resume, Canelo only stayed at 154 just for the time being. He wasn't going to be at 154 forever, because we already know what's like you know, we already know what was going to happen. Jermell Charlo was going to come around the corner, and then Demetrius Andrade and Jermall Charlo, they were literally cornering Canelo. So Canelo did not ever take the opportunity to try to unify his title, in which you know, he unified with Floyd. But then after that, you know, he just went ahead and just fought Alfredo Angulo. He fought Lara, in which I thought Lara beat him. So I think Lara, you know, that's a controversial win. Beating up James Kirkland, we already know the story on that. He didn't have his trainer. He wasn't in, you know, the right mindset. But then after that, he just, you know, suddenly moves up to middleweight, and he fought at Canelo weight at 155, where, you know, he wasn't really coming in as like a middleweight. He came in as a catch weighted super welterweight. But it's just like, you can easily tell that Canelo, he did not want any problems at, you know, at 154 and at 160. And I think the problem was just that when Jermell Charlo and Jermall Charlo and Demetrius Andrade, all these fighters came together to be Canelo's potential opponent, I think Canelo knew what the problem was, and he wanted to be out of that situation as soon as possible. So therefore, Canelo did whatever he had to do to make it seem like he wasn't avoiding anybody, but it's like we already knew that Canelo, he was already avoiding tough opposition at 154 and 160. So the only reason why he left 147 was for the sake of him going after Matthew Hatton for the title vacancy position, in which the WBC broke their own rules, where a person that is unranked was able to get a title shot, in which Matthew Hatton was never ranked at all, but yet they broke their own rules, and they basically pulled off, you know, like another, you know, just politically schemed, you know, title opportunity. You know, that's what they did with fucking Ebony Bridges, where she was ranked like number 9 in the IBF or number 10, and she gets a title shot against Maria Cecilia Roman, in which arguably Maria Roman, you know, could have won that fight, and it kind of looked like that she did win that fight. But, you know, Ebony Bridges, she had no position to be put into that place of fighting the champion, in which by the IBF's rules you're supposed to fight your way to the top to be the number 1 ranked mandatory contender, in which you have to fight the number 2 or any other fighter that's available down below the rankings. And then if the champion is able to make their once a year title defense, then I believe by those rules moving forward, you can make your voluntary defenses if you want to stay active, again in the future. So either way, you know, this is why sanctioned bodies need to be removed in boxing. You know, bring that to any other sport, people would probably end up killing, you know, each other over that, because it's like sanctioned bodies serve no benefit to the consumer, and it creates so much confusion and political tribalism in the sport itself, where there's so much blood and very corrupt evil that's being passed around that people don't want to talk about. So they foolishly act like there's nothing wrong going on in the sport, but you could obviously Like, you can obviously see what's going on. So, I mean, either way, I personally think Canelo Alvarez, if he was matched up tough, I don't think you would see the record being so close as, to perfect. I think Canelo would have been more of like a C level or B minus level fighter. I think that's really why Canelo Alvarez decided to go the way he wanted to go, because he knew what was going to happen to him if he stayed at, the welterweight division. I don't think Canelo is credible for beating a not so good fighter in Matthew Hatton, in which Matthew Hatton was never that good of a fighter to be a world champion to begin with. But at the same token, when Canelo had the opportunity to do the same thing at middleweight and fight Miguel Cotto, who wasn't at his best either, he was literally past his prime. And credit to Miguel Cotto, he's he's a 4-division world champion, if I'm not mistaken. Wait, actually, let me take a look at that, because Cotto is most likely I think he's a 3-division? Yeah, he's a 3-division, I think. Hold on. Yeah, super lightweight. Yeah, light welterweight. Miguel Cotto, he's a 3-division world champion. I know he had belts at super lightweight, and then he went on and became champion at the welterweight division. Yep, he had the WBA, and then Margarita cheated him. And then moving forward after the Floyd Mayweather clash, he was a super welterweight champion. Yeah, he beat the crap out of Margarito, at super welterweight. So yeah, that was a great performance. And then after that, So Cotto, 140, 147, 154. So Cotto, he's a 4-division world champion. So yeah, I mean Cotto, Cotto was coming towards the end of his career anyway. So he wasn't supposed to be in that position to really look good to beat Canelo. But either way, I'm pretty sure the tables would have turned a lot, worse against Canelo if he fought a prime version of Cotto, himself. So I think that makes pretty much all the best sense in the world, and I think that pretty much explains why Miguel Cotto, is one of those type of fighters where Canelo will go after, especially guys that are past their prime, that are not that good as they once was, like beating up on a Shane Mosley, Kermit Cintron. He wasn't, he wasn't, the same guy losing to, Canelo. He obviously wasn't in his prime, like blowing dudes out. But either way, I think it's pretty much fair to say that Canelo only left 147 for the sake of taking the easy route opportunity to become a champion as quickly as possible at 154. It wasn't because he was not making the weight properly, because remind you, Canelo started at 140. So a lot of people will start to say, oh, well, he was young, he was a teenager. Plenty of fighters start at smaller weights because they want to see how low they can go, and then they'll just slowly build it up. But Canelo was fighting at 147 for a very long time, up until 2000. Hold on, it was up until 2010. 2010. This is where the road to becoming a champion at 154 began. But prior to the fight with him and Jose Miguel Cotto, he was making 147 fine. So basically, Canelo was able to campaign at 147. He just didn't want to take the opportunity to fight guys like Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, maybe. He could have fought Mikey Garcia. Shit, Adrian Broner. The list goes on and on. Canelo avoided 147 so hard to the point where, I don't, I don't need to basically explain this. BoxRec pretty much explains where, where, Canelo's movement as a fighter began. So, I mean, that's pretty much it, man. I just figured that I make this little video, and I just kind of talk about it because I think it pretty much explains what I was talking about in the first place. So, I think Canelo Alvarez, he would have been a way greater fighter if he really wanted to do the absolute impossible, where, like, me personally, I would love to see Canelo become a 4 or 5 division undisputed world champion. I think if Canelo did that, you probably would have seen his record be like the greatest resume ever if he didn't cheat. On top of that, like, shit, I would have loved Canelo. I would have been supporting Canelo since, the day of high school, because I've been watching Canelo ever since I was in high school leading up to now. But like Canelo basically made himself look really bad over the years, and I don't think Canelo understands that he would have been one of the greatest fighters if he was really confident in his abilities and disciplined enough to the point where he could have made some actual noise by doing the most historic thing possible of being like a multiple time, undisputed world champion in multiple weight classes. But I think the problem why we didn't see that out of Canelo's career was because Canelo did not want to take the risk over he did not want to take the risk over the reward that he would receive fighting all the crazy opposition that he would have been matched up against at that time. And Canelo decided to basically take the easy route, try to find the least amount of resistance that's going to get you multiple world titles, but you don't have to do that much grinding to actually get there. So very similar to Vasyl Lomachenko in a way, but Canelo, he's been politically monetized to the sense of the political machine was always behind him, but he did it in such a smart way where he didn't have to put so much sacrifice into his body to get to that point. But if he did it like Errol Spence or any other, respectable fighter out there that had to get it from the ground up, then Canelo would have been literally a all-time great. He would have been legendary. He would have been like literally almost like a Muhammad Ali. Well, no, like I wouldn't say Muhammad Ali, but he would be greater than Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., and he would uplift boxing a lot better if he did that. And to which I wish Canelo did do that. And if he didn't cheat on top of that, I think Canelo would have been one of the greatest fighters ever to actually do something that crazy enough to do it. Become a 4 or 5 division undisputed world champion, just move up division after division and just keep chasing world titles and just vacate them and just move on. That's amazing. Canelo would earn my respect, and I would probably be a Canelo fan to this day if he didn't, do all that crazy stuff. But that's that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this little chop session video that I made, and be sure to like, rate, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Peace out. Salute to the mighty LDBC. Salute to TWT. I'll see you guys later. Bye.